the organization that we came into Indonesia with basically dissolved, and so and they hadn't formulated a new organization yet. So we were kind of, in a way, we were kind of orphaned like the day after we arrived.
Hey, Islanders, and welcome to episode 131 of the Camano Voice. Today I speak with a pilot with Wycliffe Bible Translator. Please welcome Josh Harrington. Hi, I'm Brandon Erickson, and you're listening to the Camano Voice podcast, where I interview folks around Camano Island and beyond. If you want to stay up to date on events, businesses, and even hear a little history of this area, subscribe to this podcast and share with your friends. Thanks for listening. Hey, Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice, where we release a new episode every Tuesday. How's your guys' week going? For those of you who don't know, we just survived our opening weekend at the Camano Scoops. So we're back in business. It's reopened. We kicked off this year with a free kids scoop for kids 12 and under. So hopefully you guys got to participate in that. If not, we hope to bring it back next year, depending on how everyone responds. But it seems like everyone is pretty happy with it. So that was a whirlwind of a trip, trying to get all that ready last week. So that was my week. Hope you guys have a good week. And I'd love to hear from you guys. Remember, it's voice@camanocommons.com. Send me an email. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the episodes, any, new guest ideas you have. And just make sure you guys are still out there, Anyways, this episode, we got to speak with Josh Harrington. And for those of you who don't know anything about mission aviation, which I expect a lot of people that aren't in the church world probably are less familiar with everything that goes into it. Mission aviation is always interesting because it's so much more, like it's a really long road to get there. Most missionary pilots I know have spent over between 5 to 10 years when they decide this is what I want to do to when they actually get to the field and get to start practicing that. So it's a very long road to get there. A lot of commitment, a lot of hardship to get there, but the adventures, the things they get to do out there are just insane. So Josh Harrington actually grew up on Camano Island. So he's a local boy, but no longer. So he and his family are serving in Papua, which for many of you probably know about one of our most popular coffees, the Papua New Guinea coffee. It's on the other side of the island of that. So just to give you a quick kind of overview of Papua, it's very mountainous. There's places along there that you can't get to by road. It's only by flying. So Josh does a lot of flying in and out of very tight, difficult places. And so anyways, we get into all of that and more, including his adventures of getting there and all that. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Josh Harrington. Hey, Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice. Today I'm here with a Wycliffe Bible Translator and pilot. Welcome to the podcast, Josh Harrington.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So before we get started, tell us a little bit about Josh.
Yeah, I grew up here on the island, and my dad was a general contractor. He built small homes in the Stanwood and the Camano Island area, and we lived off of Cross Island. He had a house up there that he had built.
Nice. Very cool. So you grew up on the island then. What kind of, just to put it into a time frame, kind of what was your growing up years like year-wise?
Oh, yeah. I was born in 1980, and so I was in high school in the 90s here at Stanwood High School.
Okay. Nice. So how's the island and Stanwood changed over that time period?
Oh, yeah, there's a lot more people and a lot more homes. And you got this cool Terry Corners place now.
Nice. So growing up on Camano, then, what was kind of your day-to-day life? What did you do down there?
Oh, growing up, well, I played basketball when I was in middle school and high school, and my parents had about 5 acres in the woods, and so I just played in the woods and built street forts and stuff like that. My grandparents, they had a house down by the beach, so In the summers we played at the beach.
Okay.
Yeah, went crabbing, fishing, stuff like that.
Nice. So how many generations have been on Camano then?
My grandparents, they moved here back in I think it was the 60s.
Okay.
They were from Seattle, moved up to retire. And so I guess it's second generation.
Nice. Very cool. So did you guys, after your grandparents moved, where were you guys living, or I guess where were your parents at before they moved over onto Camano?
Yeah, my dad, he grew up in West Seattle, and then my mom, she grew up here on the island at the country club is where she grew up at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So then you guys moved here, and then were you born here and everything?
Yeah, I was born at Everett General, but yeah, I pretty much lived here the whole time.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah, the island's gone through a little bit of changes since then. So
Yeah.
So, all right. Very cool. So then, so as you were growing up and everything, you said you played basketball, and you went to Sandwood High as well?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So as you were kind of getting near the end of high school, what were you kind of looking at as far as looking ahead?
Yeah, well, after high school, at Church Camano Chapel, a former missionary pilot came up to me and said, "Have you considered mission aviation?" And I didn't know anything about mission aviation, and so there was he said there was a demonstration at the airport, Arlington Airport,
Mm-hmm.
and it was called Missions at the Airport that Wycliffe was putting on the demonstration. They had these little aircraft called Helio Couriers, and so I went out there to the airport, and I met a Wycliffe missionary pilot, and I asked him what is it that they do, and he said that there's people all over the world that are completely isolated from the outside world. The only way in and out of most of their villages is by air, and so he said what we do is we fly in and out of their villages, and we take basically missionaries and community developers and things like that, so they can have literacy as well as community development stuff like clean water and things like that. And I thought, hey, that'd be kind of fun to be a part of that.
Yeah.
So then I started flight training.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Wow. So was that when you were in high school then?
It was right after high school. I had just graduated from high school.
Okay.
And it was about the year. I think it was the year after.
Okay. So was there anything prior to that you had ever thought about aviation, or were you looking at like engineering or anything like that?
Well, I had a friend that was taking flight lessons back in high school, and I went up with him one time in the back seat of the airplane, and they were out practicing stalls, and the instructor and he didn't tell us what they were doing. So the airplane was kind of all over the sky, and I thought it was pretty fun to ride along in the back. That was like my first introduction to small aircraft.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of a make it or break it thing. It's either like, this is really cool, or this is terrifying and I'm never doing this again.
Yeah.
Nice. So, okay, so then you decided that this is kind of a path you wanted to take then. Where did it go from there?
Well, there's a Bible college called Moody Bible College back in Chicago, and they provide provide training for missionary pilots and mechanics. And so I applied to them, and I also applied to a school in Arlington Airport called the Mission Aviation Training Academy.
Okay.
And I was accepted at the flight school in Arlington, so I started my flight training there.
Okay.
And it was just a flight school, and so I got all my FA certification as well as some training to become a missionary pilot at the airport out there.
Okay. And what does all that involve? Because that's slightly different than your standard just going the commercial pilot route, right?
Yeah, it's similar, but if you want to be a missionary pilot, you have to also become an aircraft mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to Everett Community College. They had a facility at Payne Field that you can get your A&P license, your airframe and power plant, your aircraft maintenance license, and that was a 2-year program out there.
Okay.
And so, but yeah, the training, the track to become a missionary pilot was very similar to the track to become a commercial pilot.
Okay. Nice. So then, as you were kind of going through all these trainings and things, you said you had applied at Moody, but you didn't end up going there. As you're doing your aviation training and stuff, then were you then starting to apply to other Bible colleges?
No, yeah. As soon as I was accepted by Mission Aviation Training Academy, it just kind of made sense. It was more affordable. It was local, and so I basically canceled the application with Moody and it just stayed on with MATA.
Okay. And so, did you do all your Bible training stuff with them as well then?
Yeah, I'd spent a year doing Bible training the year prior when I was right after high school. It was the year after high school that I did some Bible training in California at this place called Calvary Chapel Bible College in Murrieta. And then I did one semester there. Then I did one semester in Austria.
Oh wow!
Yeah, they had basically a satellite campus in Austria. So we stayed in a little it was a chalet on a lake, and it was pretty cool. And we took some trips to like Romania and Hungary and Italy and Germany. So it was pretty fun, just traveling around that part of Europe.
Yeah. So you said so at that point, were you married then?
No, sorry. Yeah. I'm just,
oh, okay.
Yeah. No, at that point I was single. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just me. Yep.
Nice. So then when you were over there, you said you got to visit a bunch of the other countries and stuff like that. What were kind of the highlights of visiting over there?
For me, it was probably we went to Romania. The orphanages there were pretty crazy, and then they had a lot of coal mines, and so the general track for a young person was if the parents couldn't afford their children, they would put them in these orphanages, and then after the orphanages, a lot of them just went straight into working in the coal mines, and it was just the first time I've seen what life was like for someone that wasn't really as privileged as a lot of us here in America.
Yeah,
it was pretty. It was eye-opening for me.
Yeah. So did that kind of help continue to feed what you had started, the journey you were already on with Mata and stuff?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I mean, if I could, be of service to other people and be a blessing to them, I'd like to try to do it.
Yeah. So then, what kind of happened as you were going through your training? You said you started doing the Calvary Chapel college stuff, and then overseas. What happened after that?
It was after I got back from Austria. That's when I talked to the missionary pilot about jars, and that's when I got.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, that was trying to clarify the timeline there.
Yeah.
But and it took me about. Let's see, my flight training took about 2 years, and I did it at the same time as my maintenance training. So I was pretty busy doing the maintenance training during the day, and then the flight training in the evenings and the weekends.
Okay.
And so it took me about 2 years to get done with the flight and the maintenance, and then I continued on with an online school called Utah Valley University.
Okay.
And I got a degree in aviation, basically an aviation Bachelor of Science.
Yep.
And at the time that I was working at a flight school down in Painfield, just instructing people to learn how to fly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So is it required to have an aviation, like a full degree then to do the work?
No, yeah, I mean they do want to see some Bible experience, but or Bible college experience. But as far as become a missionary pilot or mechanic, you just have to have your FA ratings and some experience.
Okay, so what kind of drew you to finish out the degree then?
Well, yeah, my dad was actually really encouraging me. He said, if you're going to go overseas and fly in the jungle, it's like you really need to leave with a Bachelor of Science. And so I thought, that's probably a good advice, and so that's what I was able to do the online degree while I was working as a flight instructor at Painfield, trying to build experience.
Okay, nice. So once you graduated from that, then where'd it go from there?
Well, I applied to some commercial operators around the country to fly cargo for they call it charter on demand service, and so I got hired by a company down in California to fly FedEx boxes around. And
okay.
So I flew in California California, Nevada, and Utah, and then also in Texas. I did that for about 2 years. Okay.
And was that to just build up hours?
Yeah, that was to just gain experience to getting ready to fly over with Wycliffe.
Yeah. Okay. So real quick then, so I always think of Wycliffe as like the Bible translator. Like I don't think of them as pilots or other things. So how does that kind of all break down within Wycliffe?
Well, I mean, Wycliffe, they support or they have a couple of aviation programs all over the world, and there's a lot of their more remote locations. The only way in and out of the village is by air, and so in Papua, there's probably about 260 different languages just in Papua, and the region of Papua is about the size of Texas.
Okay,
and so it's a really rugged territory, and there's a lot of mountains, a lot of swamps. And there's also a lot of history of just intertribal, violence, and so it's really separated people, causing all these different languages. And so the interior of Papua, there's really no roads, and then the rivers are pretty treacherous, and they don't really connect well to other villages. And so really the only way in and out of these locations is either on foot or by air.
Okay.
And so because of that, and because Wycliffe is trying to reach all these different language groups in Papua. they needed to have a flight program. So they have a flight program over there in Papua, and we've got about, I think right now we have 6 aircraft, and we fly in and out of these little villages. And so we pretty much exist there in order to provide access to all these different villages.
Okay.
And I think there's like 4 or 5 other locations throughout the world that have similar type environment where aviation is needed in order to basically provide access to these villages.
Okay. So does Wycliffe then, like, are they doing translations and stuff with some of these people? Is that part of it as well then?
Yeah, that's their main drive. So I just had a friend that he started a work about, I think it was about 10 years ago, and he landed in this village, and nobody spoke English, and nobody spoke Indonesian. They only spoke this Yetva language.
Okay.
And so he went in there and he learned this local language, and he was able to translate. He found a couple guys that were pretty good with basically with language. They were skilled with language, and they helped him translate the Yetva language into, or basically the Bible into the Yetva language, the New Testament.
Okay.
And so, but if they don't have, in a lot of cases they don't have, anything written down in their own language yet. So he had to establish an alphabet.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So they established an alphabet for this language group, and then they even he had to do a lot of literacy because people, if they don't have an alphabet, they can't even read yet. So
yeah.
So it's really the literacy that they give to these people that are just isolated out these remote locations it's huge. It's allowing them to get education. It's allowing them their next generation, or even the current generation, to basically engage the local economy better.
Yeah,
it really gives a lot of people hope and in a future, even in the Papuan economy.
Yeah, that's great. So then, so you were doing the charter flying for FedEx for a couple years then. Then at the end of that, what kind of prompted you to move on to the next thing?
Well, I did I was flying for the charter outfit in order to get experience for Wycliffe,
Mm-hmm.
and they have an evaluation process that you have to go through back in North Carolina. And so I went back there for the 2-week evaluation, and they determined that my skills were capable enough to become a missionary pilot mechanic. So then at that point, I left. I basically resigned from my job here in the States, and I went to go work. Basically work for Wycliffe.
Okay, nice. So there's a lot of mission aviation, or not aviation, but mission programs and that are doing things. For Wycliffe then, is it more of a do you have to go around and start raising support at that point, or what's that kind of look like for you then?
Yeah, no, all of us that serve over there in Papua, we churches and friends and family, basically they send us, so we have to raise our own support to
Mm-hmm.
go. Yeah, and then but pretty much what we do is we raise the support, and people will send that money into Wycliffe.
Okay.
And then from that money, then Wycliffe will then provide us the funds for living over there.
Okay, nice. So then, how long did that take you once you decided that you were able to quit the charter job? Then, how long did it take you to start going around and gather everything so you could actually take off?
Yeah, well, in the when I started my training with Wycliffe, I met my wife, Amber. Her name at the time was Amber Cunningham.
Okay.
And so right when we got done with the training, we got married, and after we got married, they wanted us to be in the States for about a year.
Okay.
And so at the end of the year, it just worked out that we had our support all raised up, and we were ready to go. So we got our visas to go to Indonesia on, I think it was like 2 or 3 days after our first anniversary.
Okay.
So we got on a plane, went over to Jakarta for language school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So how did that go then?
It was pretty crazy. We got to Jakarta, and we did like a 4-week orientation in Jakarta. And at the end of our orientation, they says, well, your language school is in another town called Bandung. It's about a 3 or 4 hour bus ride from Jakarta. And we didn't know which direction it was. And we had not studied Indonesian before we left, and so we didn't know the language. And so we didn't really know how we were going to get there, but we just happened to meet up with another guy that was going back to Bandung to basically pack up his house and leave. And so we hitched a ride with him and went up to Bandung, and he dropped us off. And he says, well, I was renting this house because he had just finished language school, and he was actually going on to Papua.
Okay.
He says, if you want to just basically talk to the landlord and just rent the house after me, you can do that. So he talked to the landlord because we didn't know any of the Indonesian yet. And
yeah.
Basically, we paid him rent for, I think it was 6 months or something like that. And then our coworker left, and we were we were left here in Bandung, this little village.
Yeah.
And he made an agreement with the next door neighbor who had a little moped, and he said, you basically give him $5 a month, and you can borrow this guy's moped.
Okay.
And so our coworker drove off, and we're in the middle of nowhere. Oh, not middle of nowhere, but we're in the middle of Bandung, but we don't know where we're at. We can't speak Indonesian at all. And so I go over to the neighbor, and I did know one word, key, was kunci.
Okay.
And so I just kind of grunted at my neighbor. I said kunci. And he handed me the keys to his bike, and then Amber and I went down into town. We found a Pizza Hut, and we had Pizza Hut that night for dinner. That kind of calmed us down a little bit.
Wow. Okay. So did you guys it doesn't sound like you went with, there was no group or anything. It was just, they just sent you over there and were like, figure it out?
Yeah, well, we were basically coming in. I think it was 2008 during the financial crisis, and so there was a lot of people that had to go home, and then there was also the organization that we came into Indonesia with basically dissolved, and so and they hadn't formulated a new organization yet. So we were kind of, in a way, we were kind of orphaned like the day after we arrived. But we had a plan. I mean, we had basically we were scheduled to go to a language school that was already set up, and so we just reported to language school in a week or two, and we just started learning the language there. Okay. So we figured it out once we kind of got the language down a little bit, and we met some more people, and it wasn't quite so nuts.
Yeah, but that's crazy that you guys didn't have like housing and all that set up for you guys, or like a plan at least.
Yeah, there was no plan. Yeah. But I mean, Bandung it's a city, and so like even if you go find a hotel, you could probably find a hotel pretty easily.
Yeah.
But we didn't know. I mean, it was we're in our mid-20s and just trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Wow. Crazy. So then you guys start getting into language school, so you can actually talk to everybody. And
yeah.
How was that for you guys? Did you guys pick it up pretty quick?
Oh, well, yeah. Both Amber and I aren't super gifted in language, at least as much as other people are there. But yeah, we picked it up well enough to be able to get around, and we met some other people, and we were able to see and do some cool stuff in Java. And yeah, it was a great experience. I really enjoyed it. I think we were there for about nine months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
So you guys finally start figuring all that out and get it all together, and then you guys start coming near the end of language school. And you said you were kind of orphaned organizationally at that point. So how did you guys know what the next step was after you guys were done with language school?
Well, we were still planning on going. I mean, the organization that basically was going to take care of our orientation, that's the one that dissolved. But when we're over there, we work with it's a nonprofit organization. They call it Yayasan, called Yajasi, and Yajasi was still there. And so after language school, we just went to Papua, just got on a plane and flew out to Papua. And I worked with Yajasi as a pilot mechanic. Okay. And my wife, she worked at a local international school, and it was the same thing. As the international school there is a nonprofit organization, and so then they teach missionary kids, grades kindergarten through high school. Okay. So she taught sixth grade. I think it was sixth grade math and English.
Okay. Was that her background prior to going over?
Yeah, she was going with Wycliffe to be a school teacher. Okay. And so so she was trained as a school teacher.
Very cool. So you guys finally make it over there then. So just for context, how long was it then that you guys decided that you would to start training with in Arlington to when you actually got boots on the ground in Papua?
I think my first flight was in September of +99, and then we got to Papua in June of 2008. Okay. Yeah. Then we got to language school in June 2008, and we got to Papua in April of 2009. Okay.
Wow. Yeah. That's something that I know there's a lot of career paths and stuff like that people take, if you're doing your doctorate or something like that, where they take, 8 years or whatever to get to there. But consistently, when I've talked to people who have done any sort of mission aviation, I've had a couple friends that have been very passionate about doing that. And it's at least that 10-year, is like a minimum of what they've done. And it's just, that's such a long amount of time to get to where you're wanting to do.
Oh, yeah. No, the flying over there is really hazardous, so it requires some life experiences as well as some aviation skills and experience and all that kind of stuff. So it's good to not have someone just fresh out of college head over there.
Yeah, no, for sure. As you guys are kind of continuing to build towards the point where you guys finally get to Papua, that's, again, 10 years is a fairly long amount of time. What is it that, were there moments where you were like, I'm not sure if this is still the right thing, or moments of doubt, or just discouragement?
Yeah, we've had plenty of those. Living in Papua, it's still a developing nation, so or region. So there's been social unrest while we're there. We've been illness, malaria, and then this last time we just got back from a 4-year term over there.
Okay.
And about midway through the term, there was a lot of rain. I think it was about 8 inches in one night or something like that. And then there was a landslide that basically choked off a river that created like an earth dam. Wow. And then it filled up with water and then just all let loose all at the same time. And it basically, landslide went through our town. We lived a little bit further down off the mountain, so we didn't get the, like the rocks and with the more of the violent flow of water, but we got the mud and kind of like basically settled in our house. And so we had about 3 feet of mud in our yard, and our cars were buried in mud, and our house there's mud and water in our house and all that kind of stuff. And so we thought that it was pretty much. I mean, the house was kind of unlivable. Like we had to step out of the house to get on the mud, and our cars didn't work anymore. I think my motorcycle was completely buried in the mud.
Oh my word!
There was like one little handle sticking up out of the mud. But we I told my wife, I was like, I think this is it. I mean, like we're like we don't have a place to stay. We don't have vehicles anymore. It's going to cost us a lot of money to fix all this. And she said, well, let's just try to see if we can get it fixed. And so we did. We my neighbor, he hired a little excavator. He's an Indonesian neighbor. He hired a little excavator, and I went over to him. I said, hey, would you be willing to help us dig out our yard? And he said, yeah, sure, he would. So once he got done with my neighbor's house, and so I think the excavator, and I think I rented like 5 dump trucks. It was like $500 a day or something like that.
Okay.
It was really cheap.
Yeah.
For comparatively, and I think we ended up taking out about 200 loads of mud out of our yard.
Wow.
And we took our car to a maintenance shop over there, and they took all the interior out. They took the engine apart. They took the transmission apart. They took everything apart basically, and I think it cost us about $1,000 to do all that.
Oh wow!
All that work. Yeah, yeah, and it was even crazier. They ended up getting it back together, and it works fine today. But yeah, I mean they took everything apart on it because the mud was everywhere. And the motorcycle I think cost me $50, but they took that completely apart and put it back together again, and it's still running today. I mean it was there was mud coming out of the exhaust when I.
Oh my word!
It was bad. But yeah, no. So we were able to dig out, and I thought that was it, but we were able to continue on.
Wow. So how did COVID hit over there?
Yeah, we were there during COVID, and we started hearing rumors of this virus or whatever, and Papua ended up shutting down the province, and so they said no flights in or out, and then there was also no boat traffic in or out. So if you were on the island, you were there, and if you're off, you couldn't get on.
Wow.
And then the same thing for the interior villages. So we've got probably about we got about 12 different people that we serve, or 12 different expat teams on the island that we serve interior.
Okay.
And so they were most of them were stuck where they were at. And so as far as like medevac services and food and supply, it was just they were allowing that, but we couldn't get them out. So and then they shut the cities down, so just there was no you couldn't be out on the road, like. Wow. And the military pretty much shut it all down. But since we're, I guess they said essential services or whatever, they let us continue working there. And so they gave us a little sticker that we could put on our car that we could basically drive down these empty streets and go through all these military roadblocks and get to work and be able to. Yeah, and we still were able to serve in the interior community. The first couple of flights that we took in, basically the resupply flights, not the teams that we support, but we also support just the local population there.
Yeah.
We'd land with a full load of rice and food and all that, and they didn't want the stuff to come off the airplane. So even out in the middle of the jungle where there's no internet, so they knew about this virus that was going through the world.
Yeah.
And no one really understood at the time. It was really early on. No one really knew exactly how severe it was and all
Yep.
that. And so they wouldn't let the pilot get out, and they wouldn't let the pilot like take all the food supplied out.
Wow.
So the pilot had to basically turn around and just take off again with a plane full of rice.
Oh my
And
word.
so they, but then slowly they were able to educate people. It's like, it's fine, that you're not gonna get sick based upon just a
Food.
box of rice or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't quite that biohazard or whatever.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, but then I think they were closed down we were like that for about, 3 months, I think. So there's no in or out transportation for about 3 months.
Okay.
And then the U.S. Embassy, they ended up sending a flight into Papua to take out any of the higher risk individuals. And so, and they told us when the plane came in, they said, this is, you don't expect another plane to come in for another 6 months.
Yeah.
And so, we decided to stay so we'd be part of the work over there.
Yeah.
But it was, other things, not just getting sick from the virus, but you also just, living in Papua, getting malaria or dengue or whatever. Just really, you're cutting yourself off to medical help at that point. And so they do have hospitals there, and they can help you to a certain degree, depending upon how severe it is. So yeah, we decided to stay, and everybody was healthy and everybody was fine, and it worked out pretty good.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's crazy as you hear different countries and everyone kind of handle it in a different way, but like some of the more isolated countries, they were able to just kind of close everything down. That's crazy though to be in that. We had it was weird being here, but like again, you're still here. So, wow, cool. So then you guys have when you guys went over, you said you went over in 2009 is when you actually landed in Papua.
Yep.
Then how long have kind of each of your stints been?
Let's see. We were over there the first time for about 3 years, and then the second time we went over, we were over there for, I think it was almost 2 years. But then we came back to the States so we could have our first child.
Okay.
And then we went back over to Indonesia, and we were over there for 2 years again, and then we came back to have our second child.
Okay.
And then we went back over. What is that? The third time. We were there for 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And no kid this time.
Yeah.
Coming up.
When you guys said you're coming back, did everyone go, really?
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, nice. So then, was this something that, again, we've talked about this a little bit, but like when you look back over where you guys have, where you came from on Camano and then getting to where you guys are now, is that something you guys had, or you had ever thought like, I want to be mission pilot and I want to do this thing? Or was it just like, it's crazy when you look back over your life?
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, both Amber and I, my wife, she grew up in Texas, and I grew up here on Camano Island, so we don't really have a lot of cross-cultural living experience. And I never would have thought that we would have been, serving and living over there for the last 13 years. It's pretty, but we love it, and we want to go back, and we don't really have any plans of stopping. But
yeah.
It's definitely been a pretty major adjustment. We were still adjusting to the culture over there, trying to learn it and try not to. By this point, we should have it figured out, but we're still learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what would you say are some of the biggest cultural differences when you guys are over there versus here?
There's a really strong sense of community over there. I mean, there is here too in different pockets, but over there, they're very the Indonesian people, to make a generalization, are very relational, and and there's a really strong sense of community within families as well as even outside of families, and kind of like almost like a village type scenario.
Okay.
And I mean, they're developing nation. In some places, they're just basically a first world city in different cities in Indonesia. So it's an island nation, and so there's a lot of different cultures. I mean, in Papua, there's 260 different languages.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Or all over Indonesia, there's probably I don't know the exact number, but there's a lot of different languages in Indonesia.
Yeah,
representing a lot of different cultures, and a lot of the main islands kind of have their own general feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the island that we're on is Papua, and then there's another island west of us called Makassar. Sulawesi. Makassar is the main town. And then there's Java and Sumatra, and they're all very different, their cultures. But so far from what we've seen is they're very relational. Probably even maybe more so than Americans.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. It's funny because, I mean, since my dad started the company in 2000, like one of the first coffees that he started getting in was the Papua New Guinea, but it's the other side of the island, and so like I've always thought of it as as a coffee place and stuff like that. But then we have other missionary friends that have gotten assigned and they're going there, but they're going to Papua, not the other side. So I was like, okay, so what's on the other side? So how much connection do you guys have with the other side of the island and stuff like that?
We don't have much. You can go across the border. It's not super easy, but we don't really have a lot of connection with Papua New Guinea.
Yeah.
Interior in Papua is very similar to the interior of Papua New Guinea, but we live kind of in a coastal town, and it's probably a little more Indonesian than what Papua New Guinea. Yeah, it's kind of an Indonesian culture basically in that little coastal town.
Okay.
But we do have quite a bit of coffee in the highlands. It's really quite good.
Okay.
And so we but it's all organic because they can't really fly in pesticides.
Yeah.
And so it's all pretty much natural.
Nice.
Yep.
Very cool. And so are there a lot of local coffee farms in there that do that?
Yeah. There's a lot of local coffee farms in the highlands of Papua. Yeah.
Okay.
They normally dry it in the highlands and then they bring it down to the city to sell, and I think most of it's sold like in Java.
Okay. Cool. So are you guys able to buy it there? And do you guys buy like green beans, or do you buy from a local roastery? Yeah, no, we just get green beans from the village. Okay.
And so normally what'll happen is just there'd be a bulk buyer coming in, and we just kind of get the tailings of it. So usually about 1 or 2 kilos or somewhere in there.
Nice.
And then it lasts for probably at least 9 months or longer.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you guys end up roasting it then?
I've got a popcorn, like a little whirly pop.
Yep.
And I just basically throw like about 300 grams in there, and then just kind of low medium heat, and then just stir it until it starts smoking, and then cool it off.
Nice. Very cool. That's awesome. So how long are you guys going to be in the States for this round then?
Yeah, we're hoping to go back in July of this year.
Okay.
That's our plan. Yeah, right now we're applying for a new visa to go back.
Okay.
And so that's our hope.
Nice. Has that been difficult with everything, all the changes with COVID and everything? Has that been difficult to get visas and travel and all that stuff?
Yeah, it has been. Right now there's a quarantine, so when you go back into Indonesia, you have to quarantine at a facility for I think right now it's 5 days, but it's kind of been flexing between 5 and 10 days.
Okay.
And so we at this point it looks like we'll probably have to quarantine when we get back into Jakarta, and then and all that. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So then, do you guys have an idea of how long you guys are planning on staying in this next time?
Well, we don't. We plan on maybe 3 to 4 years this next time. That's the current plan.
Okay. Nice. And at this point, like, that's really your home, and is that kind of you're just planning on continuing going back and forth and living there long term? Yeah, that's our plan. I mean, there's a school there that our kids can graduate high school from, and that's our current plan. We'd like to stay there as long as we can, but you just never know what the future holds. Yeah. Yeah, that's I feel like within the world of missions in general, it's like things just change so drastically in an instant. Oh yeah. And so we've seen that many times with some of our friends as well. Mm-hmm. So awesome. And then so so you guys are just continuing to do that and stay there long term then? Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah, I mean, as long as our health stays good and Papua stays peaceful and they give us visas, we'll go back. Yep. Nice. Very cool. Well, I like to end every podcast with some rapid fire questions. So the first one is, what purchase of $100 or less have you enjoyed the most in the last 3 months? Let's see. I got a cold brew coffee maker. Oh, nice. And a couple months ago. It was pretty good. Nice. Yeah, I mean, I never really had cold brew before, but okay. My wife introduced me to it, and it's pretty amazing stuff. Yeah, well, especially if you have some of those hotter days and hot coffee's not always great. Yeah. All right. Who is the most influential person outside of your family in your life? I'd have to say it was probably he started the flight school at MATA, and he was my primary flight instructor, Mike Kroll, and he introduced me into the world of aviation, and he kind of helped guide me along to how to get the training experience needed to become, a missionary pilot mechanic. Yeah. Nice. Very cool. Okay. So, fill in the blank in this question. I know this is weird, but I've always wanted to blank.
Oh yeah, I think it'd be fun to like fly into some country or some city in Eastern Europe and then take a train or multiple trains to England.
Nice.
Go through the channel.
Yeah, very cool. All right, who's an interesting or fascinating person that I should interview next?
I think you should interview Derek Fekis with Roots.
Okay, nice. All right, what piece of advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
I'd say sell the Toyota Tacoma and buy some Amazon stock.
Awesome. Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, Brandon.
All right. And Islanders, I will talk to you on the next one. Well, a big thank you to Josh Harrington for joining me on the podcast today, and thank you for listening. If you want to support Josh Harrington and his family and what they're doing, you can go to the show notes of this podcast and click on the link to help support them. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.